The wind has a spirit. The land feels this and bows. The sea feels this and dances. For generations, humankind has harnessed the spirit of the wind to give life to sailing ships. This is the story of the sailing ship Zodiac, the spirit of the wind.
All hands to sailing station. Bow watch, bow watch.
Just another ordinary day in paradise.
Hi, I'm James Keelaghan, host for your adventure aboard the schooner Zodiac, a United States National Historic Site. If you've ever sailed before, you know the excitement you feel as the wind fills the sails and the ship comes alive beneath your feet. And the bigger the ship, the more the excitement. Well, this is the largest working tall ship on the West Coast, and it's got a fascinating story to tell, and we'd like to tell it to you. So welcome aboard the schooner Zodiac. The schooner Zodiac's logbook covers most of the 20th century. She's seen Europe, Canada, New England, the Panama Canal, and almost 30,000 sunsets. Who built her, and why was she built? How has she managed to survive almost 100 years of sailings? These are some of the questions that we're going to answer on board the schooner Zodiac. Zodiac is a living inheritance, given by generations of mariners to everyone who knows her. The gift of wood, canvas, and brass is given regularly at the dock, where passengers meet the ship and each other for the first time.
Hi, Dick.
Hi, Joanne.
Zodiac is not a cruise ship. Passengers are crew. A ship this big can't sail without all hands on deck.
Just my luck to be cooking in the kitchen, which is what I've just got away from. I'm not sure I know port from starboard, but...
Port is left, starboard is right. But we learn that soon enough. Just as we learn no ship has a bathroom. It's called a head.
I could say something noble like, I wouldn't have my crew do anything I wouldn't do.
But after all, he is the head man.
And no ship has a kitchen. It's called a galley.
I think there is enough help. I might be able to peel potatoes.
To the sea they come, from Indiana and Nebraska, New York, and California. Whatever they were at home doesn't matter now. Here, they are all crew.
Request for Mr. Port, sir?
This is an elder hostel trip. Most of the guests aboard are retired, but choose to go back to work for a week as sailors.
That's what being retired is all about. You were tired before, now you're retired.
The sea is a teacher, and this is the first day of school. For the next 5 days, Zodiac will be a classroom with 20 new students, fresh for the lessons they are about to learn about sailing and the sea.
We'll let you on, but we won't let you off. There you go. Welcome aboard. Okay, here, man.
First mate Sandy Brown helps as suitcases and people both arrive neatly packed.
I made it.
Tomorrow, he will begin changing these strangers into sailors who will work together to raise the largest mainsail on the West Coast.
Go down below one at a time when they get ready to do this, and sign you on. You get a bunk assignment and that. So just, kind of wander around, meet some folks.
Elder hostel trips are so different from any other kind of chartering. On a merchant vessel, the cargo is everything. And so our cargo are passengers. And elder hostels, these people have lifetimes of stories to tell. They are wonderful, and they're so interested in learning. They're easy to get along with. Nothing surprises them. There are no ego trips. They're here for one reason, and that's to have a good time and to learn about what's going on the boat.
I think this is the most beautiful boat, and this is the most beautiful part of the world, and I'm never going home. That's what I think.
The first thing that impresses you about the Schooner Zodiac is her size. Everything about her is big. She's 127 feet from the pointy end up there to the blunt end at the back. That's half a football field. She's 25 feet wide, which is more than 4 king-size beds, weighs more than 200 tons, which is bigger than the largest whale. She flies more than 7,000 square feet of canvas, which is more than enough to carpet an entire mansion. For all her mass, the Zodiac manages her size gracefully. She can cut through the water at more than 13 knots with only the power of the wind. Unlike most surviving wooden ships, Zodiac is not now and has never been a floating museum. She is not an exhibit. This is the real thing. Through fate and fortune, Zodiac has worked every day of her life and is today the largest working tall ship on the Pacific coast. If you have ever wondered what life is like at sea, there is no better way to find out than to go to sea, just as these elder hostile sailors are doing for the next 5 days.
It's like a real ship, wasn't like you see in the movie. And it's not really crowded at all. I thought we were going to sleep. There's 4 bunks, one up on top of the other. This is nice.
Horn, plug your ears.
Zodiac sails with a small professional crew, a cadre of dedicated mariners who give up their day jobs a few weeks every year to go back in time and back to the sea. With the exception of the cook, none of them is paid.
What is it? If it's Thursday, we must be in Susha or one of those kind of things, yes.
They are volunteers who give of themselves gladly to keep the Zodiac alive. For those with a passion for sailing, Zodiac returns the favor every time she leaves the dock. Captain Carl Mayer is skipper of the Zodiac. A sailor, he will tell you, is not what you do, it's who you are. Captain Mayer became a sailor when he was 17 years old, and he has been one ever since.
I really think that when you go to sea as a kid, that something goes on there, whatever goes on there, and it gets in your blood. That expression may sound kind of dumb, but you just like it, just love it. You get out on the water, and everything else doesn't matter. For instance, just a week trip, you go out the first day and you're still thinking about shore stuff. The second day you could care less, and you know when you get back that you should have got on the phone and did some calling, but it don't matter. Okay, all right, I guess we're ready.
Below, in the galley, ship's cook Leslie Mulcahy is already busy preparing the trip's first meal. Aboard ship, pots on the stove can be moving targets, so being a good cook at sea is more than just being a good cook.
We heel, and then I just sort of, everything has fiddles and everything just kind of fits into its place. But other than that, it never gets rough. And a heel is easy to, you just listen when they're going to change sails, you rearrange everything for the other slope.
In the old days of sailing, most ships had a bosun, the officer in charge of the deck crew. Zodiac has a bosun too, though he's not in charge of much. Bosun is the ship's cat.
And there are 2 things that bother this cat: seafood and rough water. Go figure for a ship's cat. And when it gets rough, which means this is rough for Bosun, he goes in the life jacket bin, and that's where he stays. Bye, Bosun.
Ironically, Bosun, who has lived all his life aboard ship, gets easily seasick. When the ship is underway, he'd rather be left alone.
How is it in there, Bosun?
Hey guys, let's all come over here, close to me where things are safe. Go ahead and sit down. We're going to talk a little bit. Make yourself comfortable because it's going to take a while. Generally, I have this below decks, but it's so warm down there, and everybody starts taking their clothes off, and then I can't concentrate.
Captain Carl is a likable blend of old salt and old spice. Every trip provides a new audience for his well-worn jokes.
I think this is the 3rd day as captain.
The first captain's briefing is about safety, life jackets and lifeboats, what to do and what not, and the captain's philosophy on sinking.
That you'll find that nowadays, instead of the skipper going down with a ship, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Zodiac is certified by the U.S. Coast Guard to carry passengers, a feat that literally took an act of Congress. Northwest lawmakers were convinced it was an old law, not an old ship, that needed to be retired, and the United States Congress agreed.
These elder hostile people and these are people that are 60 and over, you know. They are my age, and some of these people, they come aboard. Most people come aboard because of the reading that they've had, and they've read about schooners and heavy sailing and things like that. And being that this is basically the only large certified ship on the West Coast, they dream about doing it, and here's one left that they can do it. And they go into it just full bore. They turn to and do what they read about or have read about, and give it their all. They do a heck of a job. They stand watches, and they clean the ship, and you'd think that when they pay to come on a ship like that they wouldn't be cleaning it. They're tremendous people to have aboard, actually.
I'm Lynn Brown from Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm not sure whether I'm retired yet or not.
I'm Glenn Potter. I'm not retired. I live in San Francisco and own a retail florist business.
My name is Gladys Manalaris. I think I'm the fourth person who taught English in high school. This is our third trip.
The first evening aboard the Zodiac is spent on introductions. Tomorrow, ship and crew will work together for the first time, and each new crew member needs to know where he or she is supposed to go when the captain calls sailing stations.
Somebody will be assigned to the main port topping lift. What's a main port topping lift? Well, all that will be explained to you later. But it's important to learn what your sailing station is, because you guys are going to be the crew sailing this boat, and when we have to do maneuvers, we'll call sailing stations, and whatever you're doing, you got to drop what you're doing if you're reading a book or something, and come up and take your station.
I say, when we get away from shore, boy, you're mine.
Don't worry about anything else.
There is much to learn about sailing a ship, especially one as large as the Zodiac. But if the best learning is done by doing, these crew members will be true sailors by the end of the week.
One thing, we got to be real careful in the mornings, and everybody has a tendency to do this, and on this ship we don't do it that way. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, not so far. What's this like?
Okay, well, the thing is that the skipper is the only one that can determine whether it's a good morning. But if you guys determine it, you could be wrong. There'd be nothing worse than that. Okay, so it's a heavy thing. You could say morning, things like that, but at the meeting in the morning, why, it'll be determined whether it's a good morning.
Responsibilities ashore fade away with the setting sun, and Zodiac becomes a world all its own. The new crew settles into the old ship, and it's a comfortable fit. At 11 o'clock, it's lights out, generator off, and time for the night watch to begin. The boat turns quiet. Everyone hopes for a good morning.
12 signs that spin in the heavens above us, 3 each for water, for earth, air, and fire. 8 bells in this watch, and 4 until sunrise, till we slip our moorings and get our heart's desire.
The schooner Zodiac began her life in New England, on the coast of Maine, in the small community of East Boothbay. She was built by the oldest continuously operating family shipyard in the United States, the Hodgdon Yard. In nearly 200 years, more than 400 vessels have been launched from the banks of the Damariscotta River bearing the Hodgdon name. Timothy Hodgdon is the 5th generation of Hodgdon shipbuilders, dating back to the Madison administration, America's 4th president.
Before my father passed away, we always claimed that we started in 1818, and I asked him how he knew, and he said because we did.
Turns out the Hodgdons had not started building boats in 1818. They actually had started 2 years earlier, in 1816. The story of the Hodgdon Yard was recently published by Barbara Rumsey of the Boothbay Region Historical Society.
Well, Sonny Hodgdon, the father of Timothy, asked me to research the yard. And I said, why? He said, well, we don't know anything. And this was very hard for me to understand. It was such a famous yard.
Whatever documents the Hodgdons had saved over the years burned with the rest of the yard in 1954. As a result, Rumsey based her research on documents in other hands, primarily those who did business with the yard as far back as the early 1800s, and Timothy's great-great-grandfather, Caleb Hodgdon.
In order to substantiate that a vessel was built by the Hodgdons, I had to go to the sources, and everything is gone except account books, which are a record of what, for instance, a blacksmith or a spar maker charged Caleb for work that he did for him.
Through the generations, the Hodgdons have exemplified the typical Yankee, laconic craftsmen who chose to speak through their work, and in doing so, spoke more eloquently across time than the greatest orator.
Talking is not their strong suit. Quieter men could not be found. They keep right on working without saying a word in an hour, unless it is called for by their work. This modesty of the men who are doing the most difficult, and incidentally the handsomest job of yacht planking ever undertaken in America, makes them the more interesting as one observes them at their work. Boothbay Register, April 25th, 1914.
I tried my hand at plastic, but it's hard to take a crew of fellows that have spent their lives working wood and convert them into working plastic. They don't like it. Like the sticky damn stuff.
Jim Stevens is one of the last of the old-time East Boothbay shipbuilders. He remembers when a crew of 20 men could lay a keel in the fall and launch a ship in the spring, working outside the whole time, and with only hand tools.
Well, you just did it like that. I mean, a job meant a whole lot different to you in those days than the job today.
Yeah, that's what a bunch of ads is.
I went by the men were still using axes and broad axes and adze, and everything was done practically with hand tools. Now they've got these machine tools like that, but it takes longer to keep them sharp and keep them in shape. It's ridiculous. I mean, the way people have become accustomed to it.
The tide pool that powered the Hodgdon shipyard nearly 2 centuries ago still fills and empties as it has for generations. The Hodgdons, too, still build boats in East Boothbay. Wooden boats.
A lot of fun to drive a Corvette, but it's a lot of fun to get in a Model T and go down the road, too. You know, turn your head around backwards and go down the road in a Model T. Zodiac is an impressive thing, no question.
The same shipyard that built the Zodiac is today building the Antonisa, the Corvette of the sailing world. 30 people will labor 4 years to produce this one boat, a 124-foot single-masted sloop for a customer in Italy. This custom, one-off masterpiece, when it's turned right side up and floated, will be one of the finest ships in the world.
And the niche that we've carved out for ourselves is a high-end, high-quality, state-of-the-art version, if you will, of wooden construction. It features coal molding as the basic process, featuring vacuum bagging, epoxy, adhesives, some of the composites, some of the carbon fiber, you know, to reinforce some of the wooden structures in the right areas, and again, traditional joinery.
Computers help us visit the decks of the Antonisa before she is even completed. Here, for example, is the main salon, where a grand skylight will brighten the magnificent room below, including the keyboard of a pipe organ.
These fan louvers, these are magnificent, these fan louvers. They're elliptical. Everything on the inside of this boat is based on ellipses. And this is an elliptical fan louver right here that starts and goes right around that way.
Craftsmanship is alive and well under the Hodgdon name, where it was first planted in 1816. This is Zodiac's youngest sister, the commuter yacht Liberty, launched from the Hodgdon yard in 1996. Liberty is the pinnacle of modern boatcraft, an Art Deco wonder that, if it didn't really exist, would only be believed in a dream. And beneath it all is still a wooden boat with the same pride and craftsmanship that has always been the hallmark of the Hodgdon yacht.
Maple quarter-sawn, beautiful quarter-sawn maple floors.
I guess most of that stuff is somewhat corny and sounds silly, but it is an undescribable feeling to have worked on a project as intense as what these can sometimes be, and actually feel a thing move under your feet. It does put a lump in your throat.
Zodiac was launched from the Hodgdon Yard in 1924, the peak of the Roaring '20s. Kleenex kerchiefs and Wheaties breakfast cereal were brand new in stores. Saks Fifth Avenue had just opened in New York and, despite prohibition, or perhaps because of it, sold out of silver pocket flasks the first day. Zodiac was one of the largest ships ever conceived by famed yacht designer William Hand Jr. The 1924 Rudder magazine described her as being of exceptionally strong construction with splendid accommodations and every modern convenience. She's a gaff-rigged schooner, a type of vessel originally designed for speed to bring fish to market quickly.
The word is lost. As far as I can tell, someone once said, "Look at that boat, look how she scoons." No idea what they quite meant, but a schooner is a fore and aft rigged vessel with the mainmast astern.
Hey, up she rises.
The advantage of a schooner over a square rigger is you can sail much closer into the wind, so you've got a handier boat than you would with a square rigger. And an easier boat to handle. You need a smaller crew to handle and set sail on a schooner because you do everything from the deck.
Zodiac was built for two brothers named Johnson and Johnson. It was perhaps fitting that the ship built for the heirs to the Band-Aid fortune was scratched her first day in the water.
Charles Hodgdon, Sonny's grandfather, uncle, told me about the day that she left. And, he was down on the wharf and cast the lines off for them, and they backed out of the dock. And instead of backing out of the harbor far enough like that, they left the dock and cut around to the north, so to the north of the shop like that. And Charles got really excited, you know. He never swore, and he wasn't profane in any way. But he said, "Oh, my gracious," he said, they're going to run that new boat on the rocks," he said, they're headed right for that ledge, he says, and I ran down on the wharf, he says, and I waved my hand, I said, "Don't back up anymore, don't back up anymore." And he says they backed right onto that ledge, he says, with that brand new boat. He was still suffering from it 50 years later.
The company's sterile adhesive bandages first appeared on the market in 1921, making Zodiac the boat the Band-Aids built. Both brothers were avid sailors and had a keen interest in astrology. No surprise, then, that they named their yacht Zodiac.
The brass fastenings are astonishing. She has pins, drift pins, that are about so long, and they are solid brass. There's no nails, there's no screws. These things were all brass and driven into, they're kind of like railroad spikes, but massive. And she had large oak timbers. The kind of woods that went into her are something that you simply don't see today. That kind of access to massive trees just went away long before any of us were born.
She was designed for looks and for comfort. Her whole design, her profile is the classic American fisherman, but she had a grand salon aft. It wasn't a fishing hold. She had brass fittings throughout. She had portholes because she had nice staterooms below deck. She was very much a product of well thought out comfort.
Johnson & Johnson sailed their yacht all up and down the east coast of North America and entered her in several races, including the King's Cup race to Spain in 1928. This is the oldest surviving photo of the Zodiac as she appeared in that race. Even though fitted with topsails, it was a year of light winds and she came in fourth, a day behind the winner. The following year, the stock market crashed and the country plunged into the Great Depression. The giddy days of the 1920s ended all too soon, and so too did the Johnsons' interest in their yacht.
They built an incredibly impractical item. We could all go out and spend a fortune on something that nobody in their right mind would buy because she wasn't a working boat. She was a pleasure yacht that was way too big for a pleasure yacht. She was really past the era of the grand yachts that millionaires had. The day her keel was laid, she was an impractical vessel, a wonderful vessel. They were selling a white elephant.
A curious thing happened to the Zodiac in 1930. Her name was changed from the Zodiac to the Airdine. She was registered in Bermuda and titled to one A.J. Nesbitt. Now, those three things may or may not be curious, but A.J. Nesbitt lived in Montreal. 2, Montreal is home to the Seagram's distillery, one of the largest distillers in the world. And 3, in 1930, the United States was still under Prohibition. Now, was the Zodiac used to smuggle illegal liquor into the United States? Well, nobody will ever know for certain, but as they say, dead men tell no tales. Cheers. Morning breaks early for the Zodiac and her crew of elder hostile sailors. The last task of the night watch is to wake the captain and the cook. The generator comes on at 6. The sound of the generator means hot water and hot food are on their way, and a decades-old routine aboard this tall ship begins again. Every morning, the decks are washed with salt water.
The salt water's awful cheap. We have plenty of it, so it goes around just fine.
This helps pickle the wood and keep it from rotting.
I'll never end up in the brig because of my brass polishing.
Antique brass work is polished until it gleams like new. Zodiac has a reputation for being a well-kept boat, probably because so many people are proud of her.
I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and of course we don't see much water except the Missouri River.
Very gently,
I think this is the nicest way to take a vacation there is, and I think it's just great. It's a great adventure. Learn how the bigger boats sail.
I think this is fascinating to see an old boat like this and how it's been made usable. I think it's a wonderful project. I'm so impressed with Captain Carl and thinking of taking a boat like this and bringing it up to usable thing. I think that's marvelous. Wonderful experience, and sharing it then with all these people.
Just a few weeks ago, many of these would-be sailors couldn't fathom knowing what a jib sheet was or a main port topping lift. Now they even know what a fathom is.
Okay, now I don't want any help from anybody here. I want to find out here who doesn't know how many feet in a fathom. Okay, right between there is a beautiful lady right there. Come here.
She's 1 fathom tall.
No, not quite. Okay, you guys, eat your heart out. Here's a fathom. All right. Now you like it. Okay, now let me tell you why. In the early days, when the king sent his boats all over heck, they drew charts and this and that, but they didn't have a standard measurement. So he came up with a arm's length, as a measurement, as a fathom. Generally speaking, a man's arm is 6 feet. And the word fathom is a screwed up name for embrace. I would like to tell you guys, you especially, and the lady especially, and you guys wouldn't have to raise your hands. Okay, that didn't know what a fathom was. That if you forget, see me. I'll clue you in.
Curtains and shutters in the windows of Bellingham open on the now common sight of a tall ship, once again at anchor in the bay. Mount Baker, formed by volcanic eruptions centuries ago, greets the sunrise in a crisp white jacket. The captain has declared, this is a good day.
Okay, let's get ready to weigh anchor.
Anchors aweigh, my boy. Anchors aweigh.
This morning, Captain Carl turns command of the ship over to his son, Tim. The two take turns operating the vessel. It is Captain Tim,
Avast there, me hearties!
together with First Mate Sandy, who will orchestrate the raising of the mainsail, foresail, staysail, and jib.
The sailing is very, very intriguing because it's so large. I mean, everything's so large. 4,000 square foot Maine, that's pretty impressive, pretty intimidating sometimes. They may feel like they're alone or they're not able to accomplish large things anymore, but when they get on here, they can sail this 220 tons of vessel in and out of little harbors if they work as a team. And no one person can do it alone. Crew can't do it alone very efficiently. It takes all of us to do it.
Okay, haul away, throw it. Haul!
Move with the rope, you stay there.
Don't run back. Stay in place and pull.
Ropes aboard ship are called lines.
Honest, it works better. As soon as you run out of room,
Lines that raise sails are called halyards.
keep way together.
Crew members who haul Zodiac's halyards can proudly say they've helped fly the largest mainsail of any ship on the West Coast, 4,000 square feet.
2, 3, okay, hold it there for a second. 5. Okay, pulse check.
Pulse check. That's almost like work.
Are we ready? Ready. All together now. All together now. All right. All the way. Heave. Whoa. Yeah, right. Heave. Whoa.
One more. Whoa.
Heave. Whoa.
Okay, belay that.
Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Drop it.
Once the sails are up, Zodiac and the day are underway, and life aboard ship settles into a routine.
Zodiac strange, she tugs at her anchor. She's longing to do the thing she does the best. All that she wants is some wind in the rigging, all hands on the halyards, and she'll do the rest. Earth gave her timbers and waters her home. She glides through it gently, you lean on the rail. Air is the wind that stretches the canvas, the sun burning golden, the Zodiac sail.
Periodically through the day, as the wind or the course change, sailing stations are called to change tack. Tack is the direction the sails are set to take greatest advantage of the wind.
Sailing is like a dance, actually. The slower the wind, the slower the dance. Light air day is kind of like a waltz. When the wind increases, it turns into a kind of a, you can work your way right up to a hard rock and roll, and the crew responds to that. And when you're at the helm, the excitement just mounts. The more the wind is, the more the feeling of it is.
Well, I think the ship is appreciative of what's happened to her. And anytime when you do get a good wind, now today we didn't have too much of a wind, but when you get a good wind where the scuppers are pulling water in and things like that, the ship talks to you. Yeah, you can look at the booms and so on. You can see them as massive as they are. You can see them bend, you know. And she likes it. She gets out there and goes. and does whatever you want with her.
At midday, it's lunchtime, a time to nourish the body as nature nourishes the soul. For those bold enough to go to sea, life certainly has its rewards.
This is a whole different world from anything I've ever experienced, and a wonderful world.
It always feels, when I get back on board, it feels like I've come home again. The Zodiac has a certain, I don't want to use the word smell, fragrance, or I don't know, it just has a feel, a noise, sounds, everything. And it feels good to come back, always.
What'd you guys do to the wind?
A boat like this can be painted and varnished and everything at the dock. If it never leaves the dock, then it will die.
Straighten it out right there.
And so the people are, it's lively, it's life. This boat runs on positive energy. It runs on people having a good time, and people leave having a good time. And so there is lots of positive energy that flows through this boat.
Slack away, hold it.
Near day's end, the sun rolls off to the west, and it's time to drop sails. This has indeed been a good day aboard the Zodiac.
Character-wise, they all sail different. This one here responds very nicely. Today, then, when we were tacking out there, she just came right around in light winds and so on, and she wants to do what she wanted to do. I would say probably like a well-trained horse or something. I mean, yeah, it's very, very responsive.
As gaskets are put over the sails and covers put over the brass, Zodiac and her crew settle in for another night. The sea has taught something important today to those who were paying attention in class.
One ship goes east and another west, by the same self winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sail, and not the gale, that determines where she goes. Like the ships at sea are the ways of fate, as we voyage along through life. 'Tis the set of the soul that decides the goal, not the calm or strife. I use this frequently with the kids, and some of them, they roll their eyes at me, and others listen. And so it's an interesting poem. I think it's got a lot of meat to it. Getting a comparison going to sea and with how we live and so on, it's all there. What's important.
I have a lot of pride in the fact that I helped teach people about sailing and help them become one as a crew to sail a vessel like this, because it takes a crew, and to take people who are totally novice to sailing the largest sailing schooner on the West Coast and help them become crew in 5 days and work as one functional unit. It's a good feeling.
I take home the peacefulness and joy of having been on the water again. That's very important to me, and it feeds my soul. And then I always take home the people that have been here, and I know I always carry something of a lot of them with me.
Everybody who's been here and pulls on the lines leaves a little bit of themselves here, and they take a little bit of the boat with them.
Isn't that a good humdinger of a sunset?
San Francisco, city of streetcars, sourdough bread, and one of the most dangerous ports in the world. A combination of changing tides and a shallow bay here demands people with special talents to guide ships safely in and out of the harbor. The San Francisco bar pilots were the first pilot service on the West Coast. Their mission has been the same since 1835.
Well, piloting goes way back in history, worldwide. If you read chapter 27 of Ezekiel in the Bible, pilots are mentioned. Pilots are mentioned in Homer's Iliad. King Henry VIII actually founded the Trinity House Pilots of England and started the pilotage system there as it exists today. It's that extra level of expertise and profession for the mariner, realizing that a ship's master, if you will, is a general practitioner. A pilot is a specialist.
It was here in the waters off San Francisco that the schooner Zodiac spent 40 years of her life, transferring pilots to and from passing ships 11 miles out at sea. During World War II, many U.S. servicemen on their way to fight in the Pacific saw their last wave goodbye from this ship, and their first wave hello coming home. The bar pilots picked her up cheap at an auction in 1931 for $15,000, 10 cents on the dollar of her original price. Zodiac had gone from racing yacht to workboat in just 7 years.
She was built to be especially seaworthy and to help perpetuate the knowledge of the Gloucestermen of the Atlantic Ocean. She was sold by me through a dealer to the pilots during the Great Depression, John Seward Johnson.
In the scrawl of an unknown hand, the ship's log tells us that the bar pilots renamed their new vessel the California and sent her out to sea for the first time at 9:50 on Saturday morning, February 6, 1932. During her days as a pilot schooner, California was home to more than a dozen men for a week at a time. Bunks for the crew were forward in the bow, or forecastle. Aft of the crew quarters were the only staterooms aboard for the captain and 2 engineers. The galley and the mess hall were amidships. Once a month, the cook prepared a pork roast so that the rinds could be used to grease up the skids for the yawl. Pilots' quarters were aft in the main salon. Each pilot was assigned 2 bunks, an upper dry bunk and a lower wet bunk. Retired pilot Captain Bob Porteous remembers being in hot water was sometimes desirable.
On the stove in the galley, which was just after the crew's quarters, there was a great big pot. Always had boiling water on the stove there. So we would just go get a dipper and dip out some hot water and pour it in the boots before we started, so at least you started out hot wet rather than cold wet, you see.
Porteous started with the bar pilots in 1947, when pilots rowed from ship to ship in a yawl. Later, the yawls were fitted with outboard motors, but it was still tough and dangerous work. Not all the time at sea was hard, though. Captain John Winterling, who joined the bar pilots in 1964, remembers passing the slow times fishing and playing practical jokes.
The pilots used to play jokes on each other on occasion, but you never wanted to know who did it, you know. But I think the funniest was when they nailed Captain Fowler's shoes to the floor. That was the funniest thing you'd ever see. And the crew would come down, you know, and they'd say, Captain, your ship is 10 minutes or 20 minutes away or something, and they'd nailed his shoes to the floor. Came out, stuck his feet in his shoes, and tried to stagger to the bathroom. And of course his feet didn't move, and he went flat in his face. And well, like Bob said, they called him Foul Mouth Fowler. Well, you hadn't heard anything until you heard that one.
Those who worked aboard the California remember there were spittoons everywhere. For years, there was only a hand-pumped toilet and no shower. The pride of the boat was the wheelhouse, where Captain George Thomas remembers spending his days.
The California steered very well. She had that big wheel, and as long as you didn't lose it, if you lost it, it would. I've seen sometimes you get a new pilot, and they'd come out there. Captain Simonstad, for instance. The day he came, first time he was out there, he was steering the boat, and he let go of the wheel, and she unwound from hard over, you know, when he came back, and it hit him in the chin and almost knocked him through the wheelhouse door. And it was funny at the time, but I know it must have hurt like hell.
Just how long the California was during her time with the bar pilots depended on what year you asked the question. The ship rammed other vessels on at least 4 different occasions and was rebuilt progressively shorter each time. Captain Thomas remembers hitting the fishing vessel MacArthur.
I hit him in the fog, and we rode, the construction of the bow is such, we rode right up on the back end of this thing, right just abaft the wheelhouse. So I thought, we sunk this rascal. I mean, she's going to sink. So I took everybody off. I had everybody come up there, the cook, the messman, anybody that was around came running up to help these fishermen get off this boat. So I took them all off. Then we backed off, and I saw the thing wasn't going to sink, so we had to put them all back on. But, oh yeah, there was an awful stink about that thing.
When you sail on board the Zodiac today, you sleep in the same bunks that the bar pilots slept in a half-century ago. The bunks are dry now, and there's no longer spittoons down here. But if you close your eyes at night, you can almost imagine what it was like, rocking in the swells of the Pacific Ocean, waiting for the next ship to call.
Brings tears to my eyes. Nostalgic. A lot of effort. A lot of effort went into it. Personal effort. It's tough to let go of an old lady like that, but it's good to know she's doing well.
When the bar pilots sold the schooner California in 1973, they never imagined they would see her again at all, let alone in a movie. But in 1993, there she was on the screen, all dressed in black, renamed the Ghost, and starring in the Turner Network television movie Seawolf. Several of those involved with the ship were extras in the film, and sailed her back to Seattle to wash off the stage makeup when her acting for the movie was done. To know the old girl is not only alive and well, but still working for a living after all these years, gives those who knew her when a sense of pride.
Oh, I think it's great. I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. You have no idea the excitement that was generated around here a few years back when they used, well, we still call her the California, you now call her the Zodiac. When we saw her being used to film the Seawolf, the remake of the Seawolf up there in Puget Sound, we said, hey, that's our boat, you know. I mean, it's just like an old part of the family. If you walk through the halls of this place, it looks like a museum. We don't let go of tradition very easily around here. And we hang on to it and keep it going, and it just passed on from generation to generation through the pilots. Yeah, we're pretty proud of our heritage.
The time of the pilot schooner passed in 1973, when California retired as the last wooden ship to serve as a pilot vessel under the United States flag. Pilot vessels today are made of steel. The San Francisco bar pilots have a new California, an 85-foot motor vessel that is both station and transfer vessel in one.
East to 10.
The ships that call on San Francisco Bay seem larger every day. Some now have 50 feet of steel below the waterline and tower 100 feet above it. Even at dead slow, these ships move along at 8 knots. The task of delivering these ships safely to and from port is in the same hands it has always been. Those of the San Francisco bar pilots, in whose hands this wheel once turned aboard a schooner called the California, which we know today as the Zodiac. The San Francisco bar pilots long fancied schooners as their pilot boats. When the California retired in 1973, she was the last pilot schooner in history to fly the U.S. flag. California's predecessor, the schooner Adventuress, had earlier retired to the Pacific Northwest. California would someday retire there too. The Adventuress was owned by Youth Adventures and used as a floating classroom for area school children. When Youth Adventures learned the bar pilots were selling another, larger ship, they put in a bid. But Youth Adventures was outbid by a retired couple who dreamed of sailing the California around the world. Their plan never materialized, however. The husband died before the couple's dream came true.
The first time I met, both of these elderly people, Mrs. Roll said when I first met her in her Winnebago parked outside the marina, I showed her pictures of the Adventurous and she told her what we were doing with youth groups and largely with Girl Scout cruises. And she said, oh, that's nice. Well, when the boys are through with it, perhaps we'll give it to you. And she did.
Mrs. Roll gave the California to Youth Adventures in 1975. Little did anyone associated with the project know then that the largest working tall ship on the West Coast would also be the largest working restoration project on the West Coast. Not only was Zodiac a major restoration project, Years of deferred maintenance could wait no longer if she was to survive at all. Zodiac was still in the hands of dreamers, but dreamers who were clever enough and stubborn enough to bring her around. Keeping a ship like the Zodiac alive means keeping alive the trades which built her, like blacksmithing, caulking, and planing. Every winter, Zodiac is motored to Seattle's freshwater Lake Union, where she's covered up with plastic and opened up for maintenance and repairs.
Well, we've got a 5-degree list right now. We've got 15 50-gallon drums full of water on the starboard side. It enables us to get to that plank that was under the water, that one long plank, and everybody's avoided that plank for 70 years.
Perhaps the most ambitious work project in recent years was the replacement of her entire deck, a multi-year project which began in 1996.
But you'd be amazed at how much water you can squeeze out of these little pieces. See that?
Yep. Zodiac's original fir deck timbers were well worn after more than 70 years of service. Craftsmen whose parents weren't even born when this was done the first time performed the age-old tasks of the shipwright. Replacement timbers of the same size and quality as the originals were difficult to find. Installed just as the originals were, Zodiac's new deck timbers should last another 70 years before she's opened up like this again.
This is something that's so scarce anymore, and if you take a look at the end grain on that, see on the end grain on that, that is just like gold. It's beautiful, and this is what we look for, and that's what all guys that build ships or repair ships can't find anymore. So when you do find it, it just makes you happier than anything I can think of.
Wood has to be air dried. It has to be as close to old growth as you can get. They do not make trees like this anymore. Most of the wood we're putting on here is 500 years old or thereabouts. You can't. It's not a renewable resource like they say for boat building material.
Once a year, Zodiac visits the Lake Union dry dock for a complete hull inspection. As the water is pumped away, 16 feet of Zodiac, usually hidden below the waterline, appears in the daylight for a checkup. Here is the view of the ship, mostly seen by fish and divers, a collection of timbers amazingly well preserved by all those years in salt water, looking very much like they did in a shipyard in Maine more than 70 years ago. Zodiac is now, for the first time in her life, in the hands of people who appreciate her for what she is, not for what she can do. She was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1982. In 1984, on her 60th birthday, she was given back her maiden name, the name we know her as today, Zodiac.
Oh, she's skookum. That's a Makah Indian word meaning she's sound, and I think she makes you feel good too. Just looking at her, she's seaworthy. Skookum is a favorite word, I think, in the Northwest. There's a lot of soul in the word skookum. The Zodiac is a skookum boat. Say that to anybody who hangs around boats around here, and they know exactly what you mean. She's skookum.
Skookum, the lower yacht Skookum. This is Bellissimo. Do you copy?
20 years of restoration have paid off. All the people who dreamed it could happen, worked for it to happen, and knew it could happen, are now seeing their dreams come true. Zodiac today dances on the waves in better shape than she has been in decades, and the spirit of the wind blows strong in celebration.
Zodiac spins, she's leaving the harbor, her bow pointing out to a future unknown. We stand on the deck, our eyes straining forwards, our hearts stretching backward. Think of our home. Earth gave her timbers, the waters her home. She glides through it gently, you lean on the rail. Air is the wind that stretches the canvas, the sun burning golden, the Zodiac sails.
As the sun climbs down off the sky's rigging, another day ends aboard the schooner Zodiac. The ship has become a favorite teacher to a new class of students.
As we go through life, you know, and you look for something that's worthwhile, and you can look at the ocean and you can look at the sea, and it's always moving, and it's always going somewhere. And there's always a lot of life right there. And that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be somewhere where it's going somewhere, where it's alive. And I have no regrets. The sea showed me how to live.
So much these days seems temporary or transient. The Zodiac is special because she endures. She belongs not just to our time, but to all time. With a good cruise, she'll see many more sunsets just like this. I'm James Keelaghan. Thank you for coming aboard the schooner Zodiac. Take care.